in this video, what we're going to do is go ahead and make the paddle. From the previous video we did, we were able to get the collision, the ball moving around, we were able to get the ball colliding against the walls. And what we're going to do here is go ahead and create a rectangle and get it moving with the mouse. Now to give us some insight into event handlers, the way JavaScript and HTML5 deals with that sort of thing. So just as we did with the ball, when we drew the ball, we're going to go ahead and create another function. And that's going to be called rectangle. So draw rectangle or paddle. So I'm going to create myself a function. And I'm going to call this draw paddle. Now, with functions, a lot of times what we've been using them as, we haven't really been using the ability for us to create arguments inside of these functions that we're using. We basically would write whatever we needed, and then we would go ahead and put the arguments directly. Well, we wouldn't give it any arguments. We'd just go ahead and create the object here. But suppose I wanted to create another ball, but change some things in here. Let's say I want the fill to change or something like that to change. Then what would have to happen here is I would have to go ahead and redo all of this and create another version of this, or just completely use this ball every single time without variation. But if I wanted different kinds of balls, I don't want to have to keep making functions or procedures to do this. I would rather have the procedure take in arguments and then use those arguments within the procedure. So let's actually do that with this paddle. So right now, draw paddle is pretty explicit. So I want this to be more general. So I'm going to put it to draw rectangle. Now inside of this area here, I'm going to go ahead and put the arguments that every rectangle that I draw will take. And basically, I want the X, the Y, the width and the height and the fill color of a rectangle. The same thing as a ball, but basically I'm going to do it with a rectangle. As we see here, like this arc takes ball X, ball Y, and the arc has some other variables that we don't need, or other arguments we don't need. Anytime we're putting information in here, that's called the argument. So I'm going to go ahead and say what I want in here. I'm going to need a top left for the X of this rectangle. I'm going to need a top Y. So I have the top left X and the top left Y of this rectangle. And then I'm going to call the box width and the box height. Okay, so now these are the things I need to take inside of this this rectangle. Now, I think I'm also going to, we're going to need the color also. So I'm going to say exactly what we'll be using. Now I can go ahead and use my canvas context, this right here. And I can go ahead and use exactly the same thing inside of this draw rectangle function, except I'm not going to use this right here. I'm going to use this one right here, this argument, and place it there. The same thing is going to happen with the fill. So I'm going to take this context here, this canvas context. I'm going to put fill rect. And the fill rect takes those parameters that I was talking about. So the top left X, top left Y, basically everything that I have in here up to the height will go inside of here. So the top left X, top left Y, box width, box height, and then I can go ahead and close that off. And that is going to, this function will allow me to draw a rectangle. So all I need to do now is go up here, and where it says draw ball, right under that, I'm going to put my draw rectangle and close that off. Now, I haven't quite made all the arguments, but I'm going to type the arguments that I'm definitely going to need in here because they're exactly the same as the ball argument. So I'm going to call the paddle X, paddle thickness. And I'll tell you why I'm making it uppercase later. And then I'm going to go ahead and give it a color of, let's say, like red. All right, so if I run this, it's still not going to work because now I have to go ahead and create these variables here. So I'm going to go up here in the code where I put all my other variables, like keeping all the variables in one spot makes the code a lot cleaner and readable to anyone else who wants to read it. So I'm going to create my paddle width. And as you can see, I put this as a variable. But I really want you to understand, I made this uppercase because it is convention in a lot of C languages to put constants in uppercase. And a constant means it never changes. A variable will change. A constant doesn't change. And in order to really make this a constant, it's not just that I put it all in caps. I have to change this to const. So that if there was an attempt to change this, it would actually give me an error. So I want to do the same thing with the paddle thickness. And I want the paddle thickness to be, let's try 10. And finally, I want to get the paddle X, so I'm going to say bar. And I'm going to put the X at about 200. I think we won't create this paddle Y per se. What we'll do is we'll take the height of the canvas and we'll go ahead and use the thickness in regards to the paddle Y. So really what we are saying is the canvas dot height minus the height of the paddle itself. So the thickness. I can remove this one. Is going to be the paddle width that I have up there. And the height is going to be the same as the thickness here because we're using that. And I'm going to save that and I'm going to refresh that over here. And as you can see at the bottom, I have my paddle here. Now all we need to do is get this paddle to move around the screen. I think I probably should have it a little bit higher here. So this part right here might be a little bit confusing. If I were to remove this, I'm going to go ahead and remove that and save it, and I refresh it. Now it doesn't look like the paddle is here, but it is. It's actually all the way down here below the width, the height of the canvas. So this is why what we did was we took the height of the canvas, which is going from here to here, and then we have to subtract the side, or the height of the actual paddle itself, and basically that's the thickness of the paddle. And so that's why when we put that thickness there, or the height of the paddle, I'm going to hit refresh, and then you'll see that the height is there. So basically this paddle height is not really thickness, it's really the paddle height. And then I'm going to replace that here, and I'm going to put this here. So we have the paddle width, the paddle height, and basically I'm doing exactly the same thing, and you'll see the same result. So now let's look at how to go ahead and get this paddle to move with my mouse. So instead of actually letting you see me type this out, I'm going to go ahead and type it out, and then I'm going to explain exactly what we have written. All right, so what we have here, the first thing we have is we have this event listener right here. So this is where all the magic happens. This right here will determine whether the mouse is moved, listening for what's called a mouse move. Now this has to be typed exactly like it says here. If I were to change this, nothing will work because this is actually this is a keyword that we're using to allow the event listener to know what it's listening for, and it's listening for the mouse move. So make sure this looks exactly the same because this is just like these and just like this one right here, where it's looking for a particular ID. These are also looking for particular IDs, and the one we're looking for is the mouse move. Now, here is what will run every time the mouse moves. It's actually the same as what we did when we created our intervals, when we made our timer. So this is a function that we have to create, and you can name this anything you want. I just called it update mouse position. And then what I need to do is I need to take this and create that procedure. I created it at the bottom here. Let me make this more readable. And here's that function that I created. Now, within this procedure here, because it's going through the this event handler, this event listener right here. This event listener requires that the function or procedure that's being placed here accept an argument. And we could give whatever name we want to that argument. Right now I put EVT, I could put event. And that's basically what I'm saying, that event. But if I change this, whatever I change this to, I got to make sure I reference it throughout my code here whenever I'm searching for something here. So that's what this does. Everything in here will run every time the mouse moves based off of the event handler that we created up here. Now, down here, even though I like to put my variables at the top, we're just doing it here so you can see everything. So I'm declaring these variables here, and I'm declaring the rectangle, and basically I'm creating this rectangle to be the bounds of the client rectangle, the bounding client rectangle. Okay, so that's the canvas itself, not necessarily the window itself. Then I'm going to go ahead and get the document element, and that's going to be the root element of everything. And then I am going to go here and create this mouse X position. And I'm going to take the event that's coming in here, and I'm going to grab the client's X mouse position, and I'm going to subtract it by the rectangle's left position. And then I'm going to subtract that by the scroll left. Now, centering the mouse with the paddle. If I didn't do this, and if I didn't do this, what happened is that every time I move the paddle with the mouse, it'll move on the edge, on the left edge, next to the X and the Y origin. But what I wanted to do is I want the paddle to be centered to the mouse itself. So now all I need to do is save this. Just making sure I don't have anything up here that I need to tell you about. You got to make sure, I think we already made sure we have this paddle X up here. Because that's what we used to make the paddle. We did that previously. Yeah, and that's it. So I'm going to save that, and I'm going to refresh my screen. And as you can see, I'm able to move the paddle, and it's basically staying centered to the mouse. Let's see what happens. Let me go down here. Let's see what happens if I just say mouse X equals paddle X. I'm going to save that. I'm going to refresh this. And now you see how, even though it is following my mouse, it's on the edge of the mouse. So then when I put the paddle with, and now you can see it's following the mouse, except it's in the center of the mouse. All right, great job. If you have any questions, make sure you leave them in the comment section below. Make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.